Thank you very much, Franz, for this tour de force through your toolbox. We'll come back to some of the topics you have mentioned with multi-stakeholder involvement, co-creation, and siloed organizations, and so on, when we get to the roundtable. Now we will move on to our next speaker, which is Simone Padoin, who will take us particularly to a case in Venezia, as far as I recall. Simone, take it away.
Of course. Thank you, Eric. Yes, of course. Today I'm going to talk about a specific topic that is related to what we can do in planning a new development of a very contaminated site inside the urban area with a specific and very delicate environment in the water. And usually, you shall see my presentation. Venice is famous for the cultural heritage of the city on the water, and it is famous mostly for its tourism. Venice, the ancient city of Venice, inside a lagoon. You can see the ancient city right in the middle of the lagoon in the green circle. But very little people know that here in this area, in the red circle, we have a very huge industrial park. It is on the mainland, on the borderline between the mainland and the lagoon. And this park has been built in 2019, and it was actually very developed after the Second World War. And at the end of the 70s, it was one of the largest petrochemical area in Europe. And it was also called the capital of polymers, because this is what actually an industrial park for production of fibers and related chemicals. It was also another base for industry of iron smelting and laminating, and also for aluminium. So it was extremely polluting, and it was polluting before any kind of environmental law in Italy. The first comprehensive environmental law, it was in 1997, and the second revision was in 2006. So the point is that after the 70s, after the first half of the 80s, the chemical world changed, and also the cost for energy in Italy was, and it is, one of the highest in the world. So many companies left the park, and the park was almost completely abandoned, and we had a huge problem. Over-contaminated site, with no economy, no money to do environmental restoration, and a very, very delicate environment. So what to do in this urban area, and what to do to restore the environment, and what to do to actually attract investment in this area. And the main problem related to sponge cities, which is a problem for us also, of course, is that when you face the problem of how to deal with the soil remediation, and this is a very simplified conceptual model. You can see the factories on top. You can see the different layers, so the soil, the subsoil. On the bottom, you also have the impervious layer and the groundwater that is accumulating over the impervious layer. The problem is that the first thing that you have to do to stop the flow of contamination that runs with the water. The problem is that during time, the contamination comes down to the soil, to the subsoil, and when it encounters the water, that's the real problem, because the water transports the contamination in other places. So it is not only a polluted area, but it is also a polluting area. So you have to stop the flow. You have to stop the flow, putting down the walls attached to the impervious layer, and in this way you stop the flow of the water. And of course, this is a safety measure because in this way you stop the pollution to spread, but at the same time you have a huge problem with water management, because the problem is that on one side you have very important improvement about the surface water, and you can see here two pictures about before and after the intervention of the safety measure. You can see how the natural color of the water has been restored after the works, and you can also see the pile walls that have been established between the ground and the water. But also you have problem related to, for example, flooding and rainwater. In 2006-7, we had a major flooding on the main line, and this is Venice usually is famous for the high water, and high water is when you have the flooding of the ancient city, but that is not related to rainwater, or it is related to strong wind blowing from the south and pushing the sea inside the lagoon. So it affects the lagoon, it affects the ancient city, but it never affects the mainland. In this situation in 2007, we had a major flooding. It was 300 millimeters of rain in a couple of hours. And the main problem is that the water was not flowing away. So we had the flooding in the mainland. So we understood that we had to do something very quickly. And the point is that we have to take the water, and we decided to do an integrated system to deal with different issues at the same time. How to deal with the contaminated underground water, how to deal with the effluents and the wastewater of the factories, and how to deal with the stormwater and the rainwater. So the first stage was to establish the backbone of a pipeline to take the water from the factories and to take the water from the contaminated underground and to take the rainfall water. And we brought that to an integrated wastewater treatment plant. And the point is that this plant is also designed to clean the water and reuse the water. We pump back the water to the factories, for example, for cooling systems, but also for industrial processes. So the point is that in this way, we loop the water, and we don't take any more fresh water from the environment for industrial uses. But at the same time, we can regulate the flow of the water inside the industrial park, and that affects also positively the whole urban area. This system, it was not easy to understand how to do the system, how to do the economics of the system, how to do the financial of the system. Point is that it took a lot of time, a lot of negotiations, but the point is that now it is working. It is a treatment facility of 160,000 cubic meters per day, and more than 1/3 is related to municipal wastewater, and the remaining part is industrial wastewater and rainwater. It took an investment of almost 200 million euros, and it is a private-public partnership. The investment capital is fully private, with public warranties of minimum turnover per each year. But actually, the annual turnover is around 22 million euros. The operating costs are 19 million euros or so. It has its own sustainability, economical sustainability. And the point is that all the factories deliver. Yes, of course. All the factories have to deliver the effluent as is. They don't have to do pretreatment because everything is dealt inside the treatment plant. This is also very important for the factories because in this way they pay less for environmental protection. Here you can see the picture of the industrial park with the backbone for the sewerage system. And this is the backbone that brings back the clean water to the factories. On the left side, you can see also the finishing section of the treatment plant. It is a very large constructed wetland. It is meant to do not only the finishing of the water, but also balancing the quality of the water in the lagoon. So after that, you can actually deal with the soil remediation, and this is okay, all the planning of the city with each section of and each loft of the area. We know everything that is happening from the detailed surveying to the actual works for the remediation. And this is the pictures of some of the works. So this is for the experience of Venice. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Simone. I could imagine that you could have given us a presentation lasting for quite a long time with such a huge area to be covered. Thanks for this presentation, which gave us the dimensions of scale of areas and also the dimensions of when climate change adaptation has to be taken into account or actually get remediation problems solved in advance as such. We will move on to our next speaker, Karina Almeida. Are you ready? Excellent, Karina. Thank you.
Karina, we can't hear you. Kan je haar microfoon?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
I have to change my micro. Sorry for that.
Okay.
My name is Karina Almeida. I came from Aqualogos company. Aqualogos is the Portuguese engineering consultancy firm since '96, with experience in water resources and environment in Portugal and in more than 20 countries around the world. Hope in the near future China will be at this our map in a blue color. So the company embraces many different fields of activity, has water supply and wastewater systems, environmental assessment and monitoring, construction management and supervision, or research, innovation and development. So focus on the problem and the needs. It is well known that we will face extreme weather events, especially in the urban areas and with the rapid urban growth. So this led to an overuse of natural resources, creating environmental degradation. So our cities need to be designed with a more sustainable, efficient, adaptive and resilient approach. So this can only be done adopting an holistic planning and management, as all of you already know. And it's ideally, we should plan this first sitting in our computers, because in our days we all have know-how and all this development in terms of the technological tools. That's why we are here today, near talking with each other and all around the world. So taking the approach of this last statement in terms of the holistic planning and management, Aqualogos developed several projects that integrate a vast of variables and actors of the water cycle. So Aqualogos focus on the solutions for the development of complex technological platforms, which could integrate different software systems, different types of available information, and the ability to simulate climate conditions in short and long terms, and present, past, and future climate conditions, flooded areas, water quality and quantity, soil infiltration. This is extremely important when we talk about the sponge capability of our cities. coastal areas, among others. So mainly the possibility to simulate and test the impacts of urban activities, the climates, and land use or the soil changes. So I'll present you here the H2 Porto platform. This platform was a result of a joint venture led by Aqualogos, focused on the monitoring and control of the urban water cycle, and integrates all information in order to anticipate floods, pollution events, etc. Using mainly the numerical modeling approach. So it integrates several type of models to simulate all the urban water cycle in the Porto city. Here it's some example of the screens that we can see in the H2 Porto platform. Here in the upper right image, we can see an example of the water balance for the water supply in the city. Then here we have the water balance for the wastewater supply system. So here in the Porto in January, this is the water balance in the monthly basis. We can see that 100% of the water from the wastewater system was treated. And then here we can see the water flow in the water supply system. So the colors in green and red, it's related to the water flow values instantly measured. So other components is related to water quality in the wastewater and supply system, and as well in the long coasts area in the Porto city. This has a long coast with several beaches here that the population used usually during the summer. So in these images, it is showed the weather forecast, for instance, for the next 5 days. The currents here, and the E. coli concentration for the coastal area, and as well the discharges of the water quality parameters for each river basins that are included in the Porto city. That is an extreme complex city. This is just to show you other example of the technological platform. This is the OMGA platform. This platform it's still in developing with a joint venture with a higher level of research. So we have universities and all the stakeholders, including here in this development of this platform. This integrates different types of information, such as water storage of several reservoirs, weather forecasts, meteorological data from all the stations, river flow forecasts, river and reservoirs, water quality, flood areas, or even information from the satellite images, such as the water levels from the reservoirs, or even the NDVI index from the vegetation. So this platform can be applied as in several basin watersheds or at local scales. So to concluding this short presentation, Aqualogos aim to apply unique tools for integrated water cycle management, moving from reactive to a proactive management, especially due to climate change projections. So we aim to simplify the access of different modeling results in order to adapt cities and increase our resilience. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Karina. I have just a quick question, which will also be bridging to the presentation of Chris in a short while. You really use a data-based approach to find the right solutions, and I can imagine that would be, on one hand, give much more precise assessments and also precise solutions. But it will probably also be more costly in the construction side. Have you got any assessments of how does your data-based approach favor a better operational and true cost of ownership profile in the long run?
The database approach, sorry, I didn't understand.
The fact that you are spending so much data and such a comprehensive effort in your preparations must give you a better true cost of ownership profile.
Yeah, the idea is to well, we cannot work alone. So usually we work and we develop this kind of platforms with other, especially with the stakeholders and all the water users and water managers. So usually they have already the data already usable. So we try to adapt as fast as we can to adapt that kind of data to our platforms. And usually it's not so time expensive. So
okay, thank you very much, Karina. And without further ado, we will move on to the last of the presentations, which is Chris Sevenbergen from IHH Delft. Chris, please.
Okay. Thank you, Hendrik. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my presentation is about sustainable financing mechanisms, and it has been mentioned several times today that financing is a barrier to get the water sensitive cities and the sponge cities really implemented. And what I would like to focus on today is the public-private financing, which is a very important way to attract funding and resources. For instance, in China, by 2030, 80% of the urban areas have to comply with the sponge city guidelines, and that means a huge effort. A lot of investments will be required, and the same holds true for Europe. Europe has set very ambitious targets in the coming 10 years to transform our cities into climate resilient cities, water sensitive cities. So the investments required are immense. But let's have a look at the paradigm shift we see in the landscape of infrastructure financing. And it has been mentioned by several speakers, also by Henrik, and we see a change in that landscape. And for instance, what we see is that we want to move away from economic efficiency, which has led to the gray infrastructural systems and has a very clear targets and clear guidelines and norms, towards a new paradigm where we want to look into the opportunities and to unlock the economic potentials which are there. So that's all about multiple benefits and to expand those benefits of our measures as much as possible. So that paradigm shift is occurring, and that leads, if we look at the bottom of this slide, that leads also to open the door to private investors, that we want to shift from public finance to public and private finance, and the reason is, of course, that we need private finance to fill the financing gaps. Now that is I think very important, and what I would like to show in my brief presentation, that green infrastructure or blue-green infrastructure or nature-based solutions are offering this opportunity to involve the private sector. So what is public-private partnerships? Why are we inclined to have those? One is that they make projects affordable. Private financing is important and is needed. It also will help to achieve better value for money over the lifetime of the project. We will adopt and include the private sector experience and knowledge into our projects. And last but not least, it will also better utilize, say, the social and economic benefits of our assets. Now, let's see how that will work in practice. Now, in China, we have the public-private markets already there, as well as in Europe. And this slide gives a bit of flavor of the volumes of projects we see, and these are already significant. But when we look into the Spawn City projects in particular, we see that public-private finance is really lagging behind. There are a few examples, but they are very minor. And I will come back to that within a minute. Now, what is public-private finance? Public-private finance has a few features, but maybe the two most important ones, and these are highlighted in that frame, that public-private finance are agreements between the government and the private sector, and it is merely about infrastructure. It's about community facilities and related services. So that also means that Spawn City projects are ideal settings for public-private partners, in theory. Now, the need for public-private partnerships in Spawn City program implementation is there. As I mentioned, there's a huge investment gap. It has been mentioned by Mr. Chen this morning, also from CUPD, that financing Spawn City is important. Therefore, public and private finances will be there. But it is more than only attracting additional resources. It's also improving the quality of infrastructure. It is also bringing innovation into those processes. And these innovations are also about green infrastructure. And why are these innovations so important? These are important because we are lacking a lot of, and as Frans van der Ven already mentioned, a lot of, you can say, knowledge and understanding and clear guidance how to implement green infrastructure. Now, the private sector is well placed to give a hand there. Now, green infrastructure, as we concluded in our Lot 3 SECOS project, reduces gray infrastructure requirements. So green infrastructure can be used to blend the existing gray systems. So it's not replacing, but it is blending and it's adding, say, qualities to the existing systems. But also it adds qualities in terms of additional benefits, as we mentioned by previous speakers several times. And it also enhances the redundancy of the systems, and that is the resiliency of the system. So green infrastructure has three functions as indicated in this slide. Now we see a lot of examples, more and more. This is a typical constructed wetland. You see them in many places in China. And of course, they are to purify water, to store excessive rainfall, but they do much more than that, as mentioned several times. But they also lead to the increased value of the properties close to those constructed wetlands. And the question is, of course, who is benefiting from these investments into green infrastructure and who is paying? And you see there's a discrepancy over there, that those who are benefiting are not paying. Another important function of green infrastructure are those urban floodplains. They are also more and more being installed. And again, the private investments in these areas are, as we see so far, quite limited, although the benefits from these investments are quite significant also for those who are in the private sector. Now, Chris. Yes, please. This is an example of Kunshan City, where we see urban agriculture as a way to implement green cities and Spawn City concepts. And these urban agriculture systems, they are managed by private companies, and the citizens are using those systems. Now, this is an example of New York, where we see that a green infrastructure and blending gray systems will lead to a significant reduce of the cost. What you can see here, the 2.9 billion euros is the investments in the gray systems. And when we want to expand the capacity, which is needed in New York, then there are two options. Either we expand using gray systems, or we are expanding using green systems. And what was the result of this cost-benefit analysis? That those green systems are really less expensive than the gray system. And this offers an opportunity for the private sector to involve, and that is what New York is currently doing. Now, what we did in our SECOS project, we asked our cities Beijing, Turku, Gothenburg, Copenhagen, Amsterdam, to give a scoring on what is their experience with public-private financing. And what came out of this interviews, of this scoring, is that our cities, they have limited experience in public-private partnerships. They see that it is gaining ground, and they see also that they have an increasing ability, but are not there yet, to value green infrastructure, which is considered as a critical factor in public-private finance. Now, what are the lessons we can see so far from the projects in Europe, but also in China? That we need, of course, to develop a business case with a very compelling story, where we have to capture the benefits, also the benefits, the softer benefits, and that is, of course, a challenge. And in order to do so, we need to engage the stakeholders, as mentioned several times. We have to align those interests, and we have to identify those interests. But what is also important, that we also see that there are other, as we speak, policy domains which are emerging, like health and biodiversity. Now, these domains should be connected to what we call as Spont City. So the Spont City objectives needs to be expanded and need to be more comprehensive than strictly focusing on the water system. And finally, there is also an opportunity to link carbon neutrality and mobility, which are emerging themes as well, to nature-based solutions. So there are a lot of, I would say, opportunities. Now, to conclude, we can say that public-private partnerships are gaining ground and are also really needed. Green infrastructure is offering that opportunity. It creates additional benefits, and we have to, of course, value those benefits, which is not easy, but we are making progress. We need to consider the long-term life cycle benefits and synergies of those systems, and therefore we need to include stakeholders in that process. Now, that is what I would like to say, Hendrik, about the innovative financing mechanism. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Again, a comprehensive presentation where much more time could have been spent. While we are now preparing for our roundtable, and we will have two short roundtables, I will, for the first one, invite Mads Terkelsen and Frans van de Veen and Chenli Chun and Sergio Correa to join me for this roundtable. So please open your videos and your microphones. Excellent, thanks a lot. For this first roundtable, I would invite for a short discussion about the solutions. We have seen several cases here during these presentations, but I would like to invite you to anyhow reflect a bit solutions at hand for adaptation, and for adaptation which takes into account the relevant neighboring topics which is also influenced by these with the water management. Do we have the sufficient solutions, and do we particularly have them in ways where this means that we can scale up to all cities in a rather rapid manner, without being very costly, and, sorry to ask you this way, not to have too much need of consultants and so on, but something which can be implemented rather quickly? We are seeing increasing urbanization. We are talking about countries beyond China, beyond Europe, and so on. So what is your reflection on this? Frans, will you start? And please, short answers.
Yes, thank you, Hendrik. I think you're bringing up a couple of very important issues. Well, the solutions I think we have at hand. What is necessary is they need to be customized to the local conditions. And that is where our challenge is. Customization to the local conditions is step one, and in order to do so, I think to scale up rapidly, it's important to roll out sort of a training program to city learning to accelerate this learning process, because it is not only about implementing the solutions, it's also about maintenance of the solutions. I think we have to emphasize that more and more, that construction is one, the maintenance is the other. I think these are important considerations. Another point that I want to make is say data sharing in the organizations that we are dealing with. It's a multi-stakeholder, multidisciplinary problem we are solving. So cooperation between these siloed organizations is extremely important.
Thank you, Franz. Sergio, welcome to the roundtable and to the webinar. You're also representing Aqualogos from Portugal.
Yes.
Please let me hear your reflections on the solutions we have at hand and the possibility to scale up.
Thank you very much. So I'm from Aqualogos, and my colleague Karina has made our presentation. I think one very important thing regarding the planning of these smart cities is it's more difficult to take the city smart when the cities are already developed, and should be very important that for the new cities or the small cities that want to be big cities, to start planning and to start thinking of these systems of in order to turn the cities more livable in the early stages of planning. We have tried this kind of water management platforms in different cities, and we think that is more easy for the planning, and also for the cities, and also for the implementing this kind of systems in a city that is not already planned. So it's more easy to have all the data for use this kind of water platforms. In fact, in the case of Porto City that we have done this system, was not easy because a lot of data was not available. Of course, the city have some investment to implement some measurement equipment for this to make available to make the platform usable, and so I think this kind of platforms will be more useful for new cities.
Thank you, Sergio. Chen Li Chun. We hear from several of the presentations and also the two comments here. Data is key to sponge cities management, but data access, data sharing, and siloed organizations are problems. What are your reflections on getting the data, but at the same time also having to get the organizations ready to actually sharing data and avoiding silos?
这样就是我谈谈自己的看法，就是关于这个水管理这一块的一些内容。 然后呢，首先呢，就是在中国从这个城镇化进程来说，那个从改革开放以后啊，这个进程是比较快的。快了之后呢，就会出现一系列的缩水的一些问题。那么这样一来呢，就是说，那个目前呢，就为了解决这个问题呢，中国其实政府层面呢，其实做了大量的工作，其实包括在2014年开始的海绵城市建设，其实这是一个很大的努力。那么所以说，在这个层面呢，就是说，关于有没有解决方案这一块，其实对于内涝海绵城市建设这一块涉水的有没有方案，通过国家30个试点城市呢，基本上可以说是有一定的方案。就比方说不同的城市，中国南方、北方、东部、西部，还有经济发达地区、经济不发达地区，都可以提出它相对应的那个解决方案。这里面就涉及到您第二个问题，能不能快速推广的问题。从我个人的判断啊，就是说，这也刚才您特意问我的一个问题，就是数据孤岛的问题。这个确实很现实的问题，就是海绵城市建设的一个很大的那个困境在于管网的问题。那么管网的问题呢，其实这一块呢，这个反正也说一句那个客观的话，就是很多城市呢可能没有地下管网的数据。尤其是小城市，这个我们也不否认，因为这个我也去小城市调研过，就是说它对于地下管网是一个什么样的情况，可能目前为止，别说孤岛的事，可能连数据库都没有，就不存在一个那个，就是说没有，可能那有的数据更多是存在于管理人员的那个脑海中，他可能部分的管理人员有这个。另外一个就是说，可能有的地级市以上的城市会有数据库，但这个数据库呢，可能是几年以前，或是比方说5年以前做的数据普查。那么其实从管网的角度来说，数据的普查这一块，更多的是普查管网有没有，但对于管网里面是什么样的状况，比方说它的那个有没有损坏，有没有淤堵，这些东西可能都不太清楚。所以这样的话，就是说，对于数据，一个是有没有，第二个有的质量怎么样，其实会对整个那个我们的工作其实有一定的影响。那么再回到那个，就是说国家其实想怎么干这个事儿，就是反正我多说2句哈，就是在“十四五”里面呢，就是“十四五”的规划纲要里面有很明确的一句，就是说“十四五”的国家的内涝治理要见到很明显的成效。那么见到很明显的成效了，在那个这里面就有一条，就是说要加大中央的投入这一块。这一块投入了，其实国家可能很快会推广，就是说加大中央政府的资金投入。加大中央政府资金投入，这里面其实我想回到刚才听到那 Chris 那个先生讲的，就是说这个 PPP 合作，PPP 合作这一块，确实在排水防涝这一块是没有那个一般没有那个就是说稳定的现金流。那么对于这种情况，其实更多是采取政府买单的情况。那么其实在中国的那个目前的 PPP 的那个中国有相关的法律，有一条规定，其中有一条就是说有一个金额限制，在20亿以下和20亿以下，这是2个不同的那个标准。20亿以上呢，基本上是要求那个要有稳定的现金流。那么对于20亿以下的，可能更多是采用政府买单。那么我想就请问一下，目前就是我们在财政这一块，目前跟国内合作的 PPP 有没有相关的比较成熟的案例？比方在市政公用，在排水防涝这个行业里面，因为这个确实可能对于下一阶段能解决快速的推进这个排水防涝设施建设这一块，可能会有很重要的参考意义。一方面是技术方面，确实我们已经有海绵城市的示范。再一个，我们也在和咱们中俄水平台合作，已经也取得了比较好的成效。那么在资金方面呢，我想可能就是看看您这一块有没有相关的比较成熟的案例，因为就这个实操性比较强，好吧？
Thank you very much, Chandy Chun. I think this is a topic we should discuss further, how we can set up a separate discussion about that one. For now, I would like to just turn to Mads Terkelsen and follow up on your mentioning of projects in Ghana. A question which also resembles the comment from Chen Lichun about when we move to smaller cities in remote areas, we don't have data. So what is our value proposition to cities without data? How can we move into adaptation? What are our opportunities for making this simple but still achieving results?
Good question. It's also actually relates to your first question, if we have the technologies to do all of this, and I might not agree on that, because in at least in Denmark, when we set up a problem, we set up a solution to urban blue-green development, we do not have this issue with heavy pollution. We often do that in other parts of the world, and also including China. And I think the solution there is because of the lack of data, we cannot point out the sources, pollution sources. That's just not possible. So one of the key solutions, at least in Denmark, would be to remove the sources, to clean the water environment, but we cannot do that elsewhere. So there is actually a need for remediation methods or mitigation methods that can be installed in, for example, rivers, lakes, streams, and to clean the water, the polluted water that comes from upstream. So those are one of those solutions that you can apply if you don't have the data available for removing the sources. And I think that's sort of an important thing you need to solve. Of course, also maybe look at, maybe not go for 100% clean environment, but maybe 80%, because it's looking at cost efficiency. Some areas it's much too costly to go 100%. Yeah, that's sort of my thoughts on that. To try to apply methods that can take care of the sort of inflow into the area that you work with, instead of going out and removing the sources. And it's the pollution is a very important part when you do blue-green urban development. We don't want to have pollution. Polluted water in the area.
Thank you, Mads. I will move on to Gerard de Vries, who has been responsible for the China-Europe cooperation on urban water and sponge cities. And Gerard, listening to all the presentations and people pointing to constraints regarding data, regarding knowledge about where are the upstream pollution sources, experiences on more sharing of experiences about PPPs and financing. What are your reflections on what would be for future the next step cooperation China and Europe on developing solutions and implementation models?
Yes, thank you, Henrik. Well, I think that we had a high quality of presentations today. And I think that we made a good analysis of where we are in Europe and in China. We could state that we moved from, you might say, the traditional concept of sponge cities, just capturing the average rainfall in a year, from taking into account also the extreme weather events. And besides that, talking about resilience, I think it's also very important that we not only put changing weather, changing climate into the equation, but also subsidence. What we see all over the world, that subsidence is a real big problem. In the Western world, we have a 2 to 5 millimeters subsidence in the coastal zone every year. In China, it is even 5 to 10 millimeters on an average on an annual basis for the last 20 years. So that means that subsidence is a very important issue to cover. And you might say it is bigger than the effect of sea level rise. So that is something that we really have to take on board. I think that we should also make further steps in what we call co-creation, how to bring, you might say, all the stakeholders on board and take all the issues at the table. One of our next webinars from the CCOSC series of webinars will be the webinar on co-creation and finance. And those will be the two main discussions that we will have on the policy dialogue between China and Europe on the implementation of spawn cities. The biggest question with the financing is how to make it sustainable. The investment, yes, that's something that we can overcome, but how to make it sustainable and how to bring it in a scheme where we could also cover the operational costs. Because we have to say that the spawn city elements, they are more or less, you might say, critical elements in our whole flood protection systems. So we should bring them, you might say, in a type of register where we see, okay, that is like we do with dikes, like we do with other infrastructure, and say this is the critical infrastructure and we need to maintain that and register it, check it, and operate it in a professional way. As for the green, blue infrastructures, as Chris said, we know the benefits, but how to make the people that benefit from those structures, make them, you might say, pay for the service they get. If we can turn those structures into a type of water service, then we have, you might say, the money circulating for a sustainable operation and maintenance. Thank you.
Excellent, Gary. I think that's a good one to end your your very valuable contribution. How to make those who benefit pay. How to make a healthy economic circle, paying on that those get the services, pay for the value. I'll invite the participants of our very, very brief roundtable to give a very brief comment on what is your takeaway here. We have to conclude in a few minutes, but I would just like to hear from Frans and Sergio and Chen very briefly, what has been your takeaway from today's webinar? Frans first.
Oh, thank you, Henrik. My takeaway is first of all, we are on the same track. It seems like we are gradually moving towards sort of a similar language and a similar approach. The one is called spawn city, the other one is called water sensitive urban development, etc. For good reasons, I think Gerard added some components to that. The word subsidence was not mentioned earlier in this webinar, I think. Thank you, Gerard, for bringing that up, because I think it's really, really important to include that. So we have to define that worldwide approach to bring to a more resilient city, not only a spawn city, but a resilient city not only resilient for climate change, but resilient for all sorts of shocks, economic and social shocks as well.
Converging towards the same complexity,
Yeah.
handling difficult matters in a simple way. Sergio, what is your takeaway?
Thank you. I think the main takeaway from this webinar is that we have all the tools, and I think our cities deserves the improvement that we can able to do it, and I think I think we have all the conditions to improve the quality of the life of the people in our cities. I think this is the main issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chen Li-chun, what has been your takeaway from today's webinar?
感谢主持人哈，就是说今天我们探讨之后，就是说我们感觉我们有一个共同的理想，就是说都是为了这个良好的可持续的城市的水管理。那么在中国和欧洲呢，也有不同的，也有存在一些差异，就是说它由于气候特征导致的，就是说两个地区的在应对可持续管理的时候会采取不同的方案。但是我想呢，也恰恰是这个不同，就为中国、为欧洲它的可持续水管理可以提出不同的那个可以解决问题的措施。那么这个措施呢，不管是对中国来说，还是对那个欧洲来说，都是有借鉴的。这样也正是这个中欧水平台这个项目的意义所在。好吧。
Thank you very much, Chen Li-chun. We are a few things away from being able to close for today. I will invite Liam Gier from the USME Center to say a few words about the services of the USME Center. I'll invite Edita Hogenberg Dirksen to say a few words about the upcoming Architect Shanghai event. And I will invite all of you to join our next webinar, which is on March 30th. You should from the hopefully have received information about it. Otherwise, please visit the website of CWP. And please also, again, if you haven't done it, please register so we can I can send you the feedback questionnaires. Liam Gier, the EUSME Center, very briefly, what can you offer to the companies?
Thank you, Henrik. If I may also just quickly share my screen. We did prepare a few slides, but since we are running a little bit behind time, I will run the slides very quickly and very briefly to introduce a little bit of who we are, the role we play in the entire picture, and how we can support the relevant players. The USME Center, we are a European funded project, started already in 2010, over 10 years ago. In China, we are, the majority of us are based in China. We provide a comprehensive range of services to European SMEs to facilitate them to enter the Chinese markets. In a nutshell, the services we offer includes a knowledge center where we have published comprehensive range of market reports, guidelines, and case studies. We provide first-line advice to European SMEs covering almost all sectors. We provide trainings, both online and offline, to companies, and we also have an advocacy platform where we constantly voice on behalf of European SMEs to improve constantly the business environment for European SMEs in China. And all our services are free of charge for European SMEs. On this slide, we're listed here a few of the content we have developed in the environment sector including, of course, one of the highlights is in 2020, last year, we published for CWP a market report on industrial wastewater policy overview and opportunities for two of the regions in China, namely Sichuan and Shandong province. In terms of the services we provide to SMEs, to European companies, in terms of market access, it's all listed here as well. We provide, first of all, a market overview. We present the opportunities. We also will present up-to-date policies and how these policies are implemented and the outlook. Because in China, the policies changes at a very rapid speed. We also then introduce the market access barriers and the potential limitations. Because of the fact that we are based in China, we also take the advantage of being connected to various key stakeholders in the sector. That includes government oversight, but also includes local design institutes and industry parks. Lastly, we also provide this advocacy work towards a better business environment for European SMEs in China. And eventually we work on the good purpose to facilitate to match the solution holders with the challenge owners in China. As Henrik has introduced, we are going to collaborate with the China-Europe Porto Platform in a series of activities, including 4 webinar sessions. And eventually, we are also in discussion of having a booth participation at Aquatech in Shanghai later this year in June, where we potentially are going to collect interest from European companies, exhibitors who are willing to participate, however limited to the travel restrictions that are now taking place. That is in very short who we are, what we do, how we can support. I noticed that from our panelists today and also from the participants, there are a lot of companies who are already in China, but for some of the companies that are still looking into entering the market, you are more than welcome to contact us, and we are happy to offer our support. And that is it.
Thank you very much, Liam. Editor, upcoming Aquatech Shanghai.
Yes, good morning or good afternoon from Amsterdam. I'm Edita Hogenberg, the event director of Aquatech China, Mexico, and Amsterdam. It was really interesting to join this webinar to hear more about the challenges in water, like data, but also the multi-stakeholder approach, because that's also well, these topics we also want to address for Aquatech, not only for China, but also for our online platform and in Amsterdam and Mexico as well. So we are really pleased that we are involved of this series of webinars in cooperation with the CEWP. We will continue this valuable conversation at Aquatech China in June, because together with CEWP, we will host a seminar live at Aquatech China. So for the ones who are in China, you're of course welcome to join and to take it to the next level. Well, I like to stay connected with you to talk more about water challenges. So please, if you have any topics or cases that you would like to highlight at Aquatech, then please reach out to me. And of course, I hope to meet you all in person, either in China or Amsterdam or in Mexico. But one thing, last but not least, a big thank you to you, Henrik. I think you were an excellent chairman for this first webinar. So thank you for bringing this expertise together with us. So thank you. See you next time.
Thank you, Editor, and thanks for your nice words. That's quite good because you have to deal with me. I will be facilitating the next ones, and hope we'll see all of you again on March 30th. Find information at the website. Go go to the chat for finding the information. Be aware of the 3 small dots. You can save the chat if you don't want to take notes. Thanks to all the speakers. Thanks to the interpreters. You've done a fantastic job and so on. Please, everybody, see you again on March 30th and have a nice day. All presentations should be, hopefully, they will be available at the CWP website within a very few days. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.